Barbara, why don't you start speaking?
Good evening and
Okay,
welcome.
stop for a minute. I'm going to broadcast now and count to 5, and then you may begin. Okay.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's third and final virtual forum for this primary election season, featuring the candidates for Congressional District Number 2. This forum is once again being co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Whidbey Island and the Sno-Isle Libraries. You can find additional information about the League, our mission and activities to make democracy work, and our nonpartisan status on our website at www.lwvwhidbey.org. Sno-Isle Libraries would like you to know that in addition to the current service of no-contact pickup of physical materials at your local library, there's a wide variety of programming resources, online programming, and downloadable books and audiobooks available on the website at www.snoisle.org. Our thanks to Sno-Isle for aiding in the publicity for these events, including the production of their eye-catching posters. My name is Barbara Seitley. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Whidbey Island, and I will be your moderator for the event this evening. Carol Pulliam, our local league president, is our platform manager. My fellow panelists, in addition to the candidates, are Joanne Rooms, who will be our timekeeper this evening, and Alan Whitman, who will be reading a closing statement from Representative Larson. The rest of the candidates who have accepted our invitation for tonight are going to be reduced on screen in alphabetical order. The format for this evening will be the standard Q&A. Questions have been selected in advance by our forum committee from those submitted to us by league members and members of the public. None of the questions have been disclosed to the candidates prior to the opening of this forum. The moderator will pose all the questions. Each candidate will have an opportunity to answer all questions. The order of the candidates in respect to the questions has been determined in advance by the league organizers to ensure a random and fair sequence. The first responder to a question will have 90 seconds to answer, and the remaining candidates will have 60 seconds to answer. The timer will signal when 15 seconds remains and when the time is up. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. For further information about the candidates and to see their responses to a different set of questions, visit the LWV Voters website, www.411.org. The forums are being recorded by the League. A link for viewing will be posted on our website, www.lwvwhidbey.org. No other recording is permitted. The League of Women Voters adheres strictly to the requirements of the FCC regarding the use of recordings. Any use of the recording requires approval of the LWV Whidbey Island, and then only with the caveat that it must be broadcast in its entirety. No candidate will be allowed to edit or use the footage for campaign purposes. Before we begin the questions, our technical platform manager, Carol Pulliam, will explain the technical format. Carol? Carol, you are muted.
I'm unmuted, I know. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. It has been my pleasure to support our program tonight. For those of you who have not attended a webinar before, I want to clarify what you will see and hear. You will be able to see the questions for the candidates and watch the candidates as they answer the questions. The contact information for all of the candidates will be posted during their closing statements. We hope you will contact them with your questions. You will not be able to interact with us during the webinar, and to get feedback from you, you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to our League of Women Voters of Whidbey Island email. We hope that you will help us learn from this experience so that we may do a better job in October for the general election forums. Thank you for joining us. Barbara?
Thank you. Let's go right to question number 1. The Black Lives Matter movement has focused national attention on the racial inequities that exist in this country. What measures do you support that would promote racial and social justice in this country? And Mr. Hart, we will start with you. You have 90 seconds to respond. Mr. Hart, you unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Laws and policies against discrimination have been in place for decades, but they have not been adequately enforced. Those who don't follow existing laws and policies will likely not change based on new laws. Instead of new laws, I will advocate for strong enforcement of existing legislation to ensure that everyone will have the same opportunity regardless of race. Americans must take a look inside themselves and be honest about how they are treating different races, set an example by treating all people in our nation equally, stop holding biases based on the actions of someone else in the past, and not stay silent when they witness racial discrimination. I will advocate for social awareness and strict enforcement of our nation's existing laws pertaining to discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wee, would you go next, please? Mr. Wee?
I want to say that BLM is a racist and prejudiced organization, and it is led by trained Marxists that have a heart to destroy this country. If you look carefully, you'll see that this country, for the most part, is not actually racist. And I'm very sad to see that. As a person of color, I'm very sad. And it actually doesn't matter if I'm a person of color. I'm sad to see that. So I want to say, don't listen to BLM. It's okay. Your skin color does not matter, and you do not owe anyone atonement based on this color of your skin. But rather, we should look to God and look to him for forgiveness of our own sins. He says that God commendeth his love towards us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So I just want to encourage everyone to not look at people's skin color and have a society which is colorblind from the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Haselow.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm going to trail a little bit on what my friend Tim Weiss said. You know, I told you guys before the meeting actually started, I've been to close to 50 countries, dozens of countries, provinces, places, and we are, without a doubt, the least racist, most diverse country on the planet Earth. There's no question about it. You can't even argue that with a straight face and honestly believe that we're a big, giant, nasty, racist country. I'd say turn off the news for a few weeks and you won't think about it again. Because what the news has managed to do is convince us all that the majority of the people out there are racist and think each other is racist, when it's really just a small minority of people who are self-proclaimed victims. So I would go back and I would think about what Cody said as well. We have lots of laws on the books. And if we don't enforce those, how is making a new law better? How is making a new law going to make it any better? So I say we are good. We need to turn off the news and we need to treat each other with respect.
Thank you. Mr. Call?
Thank you. So I'd like to say I'm in full support of the Black Lives Matter movement. I was actually down in Portland last night supporting protests outside the federal building. I have been down to the Seattle Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in support of that movement also. I very much encourage people to look at my website. And when we talk about racial and social discrimination, we're not just talking about Black Lives Matter. I want people to know that I have marched with the Answer Coalition in support of Palestinian rights. I have on my website a nationwide plan for police justice. It's called 10 Demands for Justice. People can look at the website 10forjustice.com. But we are looking at, radically altering how we do policing in this country. Also, we need to talk about women's rights when we talk about social justice. We need to talk about overturning the Hyde Amendment and ensuring women have full reproductive rights in this country. We also need to talk about LGBTQ rights. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Call. And Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Kennedy, you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for the question. I grew up in the South. My father had purchased 10 acres on a bayou in Panama City, Florida, when I was in junior high. And unbeknownst to him, when he bought it, the town that was right next to us was a KKK town. This was in the early 70s. We had just moved from Monterey, California, so it was just at the height of the end of Jimi Hendrix and all that was happening in the Bay Area. So to go down to that part of the world in Florida was a real culture shock. I graduated from high school there. I would get on a bus from our home, go through Southport, which was the KKK town, go to a public school. And I was an athlete almost from the day that I started junior high until I graduated. So most of my athletic friends were Black, and we all coexisted together. I don't understand what's happening right now because I, as a retired military wife and daughter, I've been around different ethnicities all my life, and I've never understood the division. I was not raised to see color. It's not how my parents raised us. And why I understand that people are upset in this country, that we need to all come together and try to coexist and work on the problems and communicate with one another. And the biggest thing, communication.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Okay.
We will now go to question number 2. What measures would you support to address the marked disparity in income and wealth in the United States? Mr. Haselow, this question will go to you first. You have 90 seconds.
Great. I'm not going to need 90 seconds for this one. Let the free market take care of it. I mean, the reality is we've made more millionaires, we've made more rich people, we've made more middle class than any other country in the entire world. And we've done it with free market. We've done it because I can come up with an idea and I can go out and market that idea and produce that widget. And I can go out and encourage people that that's a good idea, and I can get wealthy doing it. And while I'm getting wealthy, I can hire tons of people to create these widgets. What we've done recently, and the reason we see, I don't even think we see more disparity now than we ever have before. I think it's even better than it's ever been. But the reason we see this perceived disparity is, once again, we look at others rather than facts. We listen to opinions rather than facts. So I say let the free market clear it up. I say let people design what they want to design, build what they want to build, have a business without government intrusion. I mean, do you realize that you have to have go out and get a permit to cut hair? You have to have a permit for just about anything. There's a label on your mattress that says, do not remove unless you're the final buyer. It's time for the government to get out of the way of some of this stuff and let the free market take care of this problem. A rising tide lifts all ships. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy. Ms. Kennedy? Ms. Kennedy, would you unmute yourself, please? There we go.
Okay. I'm a firm believer in capitalism. I've lived in countries where it was very economically depressed, and I feel like that citizens in this country need to be able to prosper and do what their God-given rights are to move forward. The divisions in the wealth in this country, I think, are driven a lot more by the media and the propaganda that we're being fed in a lot of cases. And in certain parts of the country, minimum wage is different and people are moving around. I think that we need to look at possibly a national minimum wage, but it's got to be done in a very thoughtful way so that it doesn't impact areas that are economically depressed. And I think it's going to be with a team of people that are the economists and just a very large group of people that are in that capitalistic
Time.
and try to make those changes.
Thank you. Mr. Call.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to identify first that after the 2008 recession, over 100% of the gains lost by the top 10% went back to them, which means the bottom 90% of this country actually lost financial ground. We have to have a government that is going to ensure that laws are made that stop the separation or the growth of the income inequality divide every time we have a recession, and make sure that if we have a recovery, that the financial benefits of that recovery go to the working class. $1,200 was absolutely not enough for working families, and people are on the verge of homelessness right now. I encourage people to look at my labor and economy platform. Strengthening unions is extremely important, and we need to have some guarantees for the basic necessities of life, and that is housing and healthcare and education. There is a lot that we can do that our government, because our government tends to be very represented by corporations, does not do for the working class.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Mr. Wee.
Well, this is a very interesting question. Should the government ensure that there is not a difference between people in income and wealth? We really need to think about that. I think that it shouldn't. I think the government should enforce laws in a skin color, colorblind way that are fair, applied to all, and that everyone knows ahead of time whether there are penalties or there are not, how it will work. And in that way, we can ensure a society that can really work hard and get the fruit of our labors. If you think about it, sometimes we look at it and we say, look, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a really rich white person and a really poor minority? Or maybe you're talking about a homeless person and Oprah. There's a lot of different possibilities. But I think the best thing government can do is to lower taxes, deregulate, and we had the lowest unemployment in 50 years in January, and that is the way to go.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Mr. Wee. Next will be Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I'm hearing Mr. Wee and Hazelo and I share a lot of the same beliefs on this. First, let's just say it, we are the wealthiest society in the history of humankind. So disparity is, it's an interesting thing to look at. It's a word with a connotation that's not appropriate. We have a wealthy class that succeeded. I don't hate them for that. People should not hate people for succeeding. And that's what this kind of question really promotes. And I won't dignify that, but I will say that we should be giving everybody opportunity. The free market system is great for that. And the number one part of that has allowed more success than anything in the history of the world has been the education system and equal opportunity for people to achieve, and not holding people back with false ceilings based on some sort of social requirement that isn't fair to the individual. So again, I think it's just the free market is the answer.
Thank you. Okay, and now we will go to question number 3. International trade is significant to Washington State's economy. Currently, many of the decisions affecting trade are made by executive order. How do you suggest Congress, as a representative body, can take back this power? First person to answer this question would be Mr. Haslow. You have 90 seconds.
Okay. Well, you know, executive order has been a tool used by every president for the history of our country. Our previous couple presidents have used it a lot more than the current president uses it. But right now, it's what have you done for me lately, right? So we're looking at our current president, but to blame him for bad policy for the last 30 years in trade, boy, that's a stretch at best, isn't it? If it's all Trump's fault and it's all happened in this last 3.5 years, my goodness, what was going on for the past 20 years? So the majority of the problems we have with trade right now started in the 90s. Started when we started being a little over-friendly and over-inviting to the Chinese. And so what's going on right now needs to happen. The playing field needs to be leveled. The trade agreements need to be rewritten and need to be put back in a position where America actually benefits from them, not being taken advantage of all the time. And so I believe that as a congressional branch, yeah, we have the power. And we can go in and we can make laws and rules and regulations that override this executive order. We just have to be willing to do it. If the executive order is that egregious, then the Congress can get in there and make a difference. The problem is Congress is just worried about getting reelected. The career politicians don't want to fix things. They want to argue and stay in the limelight and get reelected. So
thank you,
that's what it is.
Mr. Haslow. Next, Ms. Kennedy, would you respond to this question, please? You have 60 seconds.
I think the first thing that we really seriously need to look at is the trade agreements that have been made in the past need to be very closely looked at to find out who they actually are benefiting. And if they're benefiting overseas countries and businesses that are not in the best interest of the United States and our states, then we need to make some changes. So I think the first thing that really needs to happen is to go back and find out what is actually on the books. And if there are agreements that have been made that are not going to support what the states, in particular Washington State, are doing, or the country as a whole are doing, then we need to have the congressional body go in and explore what options are available. Executive orders shouldn't come into play, or should not come into play if Congress and the states are doing and the best that they possibly can with what the trade agreements are. And right now, I think in the past, it's always been about a politician, a government official, and whatever deal they're making, and it's not benefiting the United States or the individual states. So we need to go back and look very, very closely at what is affecting America.
Thank you. Mr. Hart?
Yeah, my perspective, this is not a problem I want to propose a solution for. We have branches of the government that were established for a reason. The president has his powers, the Congress has their powers. The ability for the executive branch to enact trade restrictions or privileges is their duty, and they suffer the punishment for it if they don't do it in a manner consistent with what the public wants. The same as the legislature. we all know that Congress is inefficient and can't get a lot of things done. So I'm glad we have the brilliance of our government to be able to accommodate that. If the legislature, and as a member of it, has a great idea, then I think that in the spirit of doing what's right for America, then the members would vote for it and it would unanimously go through. And that's how this government is supposed to work. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you. Mr. Wee? Would you unmute yourself, please? Mr. Wee?
This is a great question. You know, the power of the president to regulate trade is actually not in the Constitution, and it is the sole power of Congress to do so. So I would say actually Congress should maybe take that back. Now, the president has his power lawfully because those were granted to him by Congress. In 1934, after the Great Depression started, the president received that power from Congress. And then later Kennedy, I think, created a scenario where he signed into law this thing where the president is able to adjust tariffs based on national security. I actually think Congress should take those laws back and have the sole power to regulate trade.
15.
And that probably seems a little bit unpopular given my support for the president. But I think in the meantime, he should do everything he can to have a great trade. So use those executive orders.
Thank you. Mr. Call?
I am going to agree with much of what has been said here. I think Congress has fairly well abdicated a lot of its powers. Again, as I'm not saying I'm in agreement with decisions that President Trump has made, but I am going to say if Congress wants to take those powers back, it certainly has the ability to do so. What I would like to say about trade in particular is that I am in opposition to trade agreements, these international free trade agreements that hurt the American worker and also hurt international workers. So I want to make sure that if we have trade agreements, they're going to have high labor safety standards, labor wage standards, and also don't put international workers at risk. Many of our trade agreements do that. So they may be beneficial to certain individual corporations for profit making, but they are not beneficial to the working class. So I think we need strong union jobs in this country, and we need to have trade agreements that are going to support those strong union jobs.
Thank you. That takes us to question number 4. Due to the fragile current state of the U.S. economy, what measures can the federal government take to stabilize the economy going forward? Ms. Kennedy, would you be the first to answer that question for us, please?
I think I've got a lot to learn. This is a really big question. The federal government has gotten so big that I think part of the problem that we've got in Congress right now is there's too much on the books, and we need to be able to sit back, look what is on the books, and if there need to be changes, then those need to move forward. The economy right now, I personally believe is doing very well, even with all the COVID and things that have occurred. But we also have got a president who has been a businessman and is looking at a bigger picture. And so as he's trying to establish what needs to be done for the future, we also need to have politicians and citizens that are looking ahead as well. And it's going to be a huge endeavor because I think in a lot of ways there's so much pushback that
15.
that we're just going to have to sit down and communicate and try to move this forward the best that we can with what we have on the books, and if need be, make the changes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Mr. Call?
Thank you. I love this question, and I want to first direct people to my website if I can, because back on June 16th, I did a forum on modern monetary theory with Professor Fidel Kaboub, who is a professor of economics at Denison University in Ohio. And I really believe that taking a look at the ideas presented in that forum are where the answers lie. Again, I talked earlier about the growing income inequality divide and how the recession recovery has gone to the top 10% while the 90% has lost ground. The way we're going to take care of that is we're going to make sure that our federal government is investing in education, in healthcare. I support Medicare for all, in making sure that housing is guaranteed and that jobs are guaranteed in this country, that we are transforming our energy systems into sustainable, renewable energy, putting people to work with the Green New Deal in a federal jobs, with the federal jobs guarantee. We have the 8 richest men in the world, gaining $430 billion throughout the COVID recovery, while the working class is losing ground and many people are facing homelessness. So we do have to take action. I believe modern monetary theory principles are the way to do that. And I again encourage people to go look at that forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Mr. Hart?
Yeah, I think first off, point out we just ended one of the most prosperous economic periods in the history of our country. So the fragile state is obviously due to the COVID crisis that we're in. I pointed this out before. One of my primary platform ideas, which the Congress is starting to actually pay attention to, is the childcare issues across our country, holding back working families from being able to go back to work. I've been advocating for this for months. I am a father of 3 myself in school. I cannot overstate how important this is. With that said, when the COVID crisis does finally pass, we have the foundation to continue growing as a great economy. So I'll comment on that. We must keep supporting small business and stop attacking people for being successful. It seems to be a trend among many out there to attack people and try to take what they earn instead of helping people up. I am a business owner. I employ a number of people and keep their families sustaining themselves. We need to promote that across our country.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Wee?
Remember, January 2020, the lowest unemployment in 50 years. So that's how we do it. We go back to where it was in January 2020, encourage the policies that were there before, including lowering taxes and deregulating many things that stifle businesses, encourage small businesses from the, to the smallest ones, make it possible. I think one of the things I've realized as a small business owner is just how daunting it is to go through all kinds of government bureaucracy just to pay the paycheck. In Washington State, you have to file 5 different websites, 5 different ways, just to meet your quarterly requirements. So streamline businesses, allow people who are even just working to have small businesses. I think that'll be a great help. And I think the other thing we need to solve is the barrier for people that are dependent on the government to get off government dependence. I think all these free things is a really terrible idea because it ends up in bondage.
Thank you, Mr. Wee. Mr. Hazelow?
Yeah, this is a good question. What we need to do is like what Tim just said. We need to go back to what was working in January of 2020. The Trump economy is the best we've ever had. There's no question about it. There's no doubt about it. It's because he's a businessman. It's because he knew how to do it right. And it's because he knew how to get the government out of the way. That red tape that he was just talking about. I too wrote a lot of paychecks in my life. And I too have been very frustrated with the way the government dabbles in every aspect of our businesses. So we need to thin this regulation out. We need to open up our economy to small businesses. And you know what? Open up our economy. Let's think about this. 99.15% of the population is going to survive this whole thing. And yet our kids aren't going to school. Our small businesses are closed while Costco can rake in millions and Amazon can rake in billions. let's open up this economy. Let's take care of the people who are at risk, but let the rest of us get on with our life.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. So this will be question number 5. What should immigration reform look like? Mr. Hart, let's start with you. Mr. Hart, you're muted. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry.
There
Yeah,
you
I
go.
was saying that's a tremendously large question. So immigration reform. So first off, you have to think about what your position on it is. I believe in a controlled border. I believe in promoting immigration for the betterment of our country. I believe in accommodating people who are under dire situations. But again, if we're bringing people to our country and we have a chance to bring some people in that are contribute to our society, we're not only giving them more opportunity, but we're bettering it for the people that are already here. We've already seen that bringing people in that are impoverished leads to a life of dependence upon our society. It's not an easy fit for everybody. So we have to take all that into consideration. I think that covers the majority of how I feel about it.
Well, thank you. Mr. Wee?
My grandmother and my father, they left China in a boat, inside the fish hold of a boat. And when they left, it was illegal emigration. It was illegal because they weren't allowed to leave. Think about that. Here, everyone is going over borders illegally just to get into this country because it's so great. We really need to remember that and think about it. I think the best immigration reform is just to do and execute the laws that we have already on the books. And we can limit immigration, I think, for the time being until all Americans get back to work and that we have a thriving economy, and then begin to bring in people based on merit. Bring in people that have a heart to make America great, a heart to love this society of competitive capitalism, and that will start businesses and do things that make this country thrive and bring many jobs to many people. That's what we want. And we don't need to have a globalistic standpoint on immigration, but instead we should think, what makes America better? Because the American government is there to serve the American people, and that's their job. And if we want to help others in other countries, each individual citizen can go do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wee. Mr. Hazelo.
Yeah, well, first of all, I believe in American exceptionalism. And there's no way anybody in this world can convince me otherwise. If it wasn't so, why do people risk their very lives to try and get here, like Tim's family? I mean, imagine the fish hold, right? I used to fly patrol missions off of Cuba, and I would watch these people on boats just hanging off the sides of these boats in the water for days on end, trying to get to our country. So immigration is much bigger than this little question we have right here. But we need to have an immigration system that works for our country. We need to bring people in that are going to help our country be better. We need to bring people here that want to be Americans, not bring the garbage that they're leaving behind to our country and try to convert us into that. There's entire neighborhoods north of Detroit and in Minnesota where police won't even patrol because they've become such third world countries, the countries these people came from. And so we need to enforce the laws we have, and we need to be able to fix and replace the ones that don't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy.
I believe that our immigration system needs to go back and look at what the rules and the laws have been previously before other administrations came in and started making concession for people that were coming into our country illegally. I too have lived overseas, and I have seen people struggle. I know I have personal military friends who have spent years, time, money, and had to learn about our country in order to become US citizens. If people want to come to America, this should not be a welfare country. If people want to come here, they need to bring what they bring that's a positive.
15.
Not coming to the country and expect us tax-paying legal Americans to pay for whatever reason they are leaving their country. I always wonder why people actually leave their countries and don't stay and try to make their country better.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. And Mr. Call.
Yeah, so following directly along that last statement, people are leaving their countries because over the last 70 years, our foreign policy has subverted and suppressed democracy, grassroots democracy in their home countries. People are fleeing economic violence, and more recently, people are fleeing climate violence. People are climate refugees coming from places where, because of the changes in our global climate, they can no longer have economic sustainability. So I believe, first of all, we need to stop putting people in concentration camps at our border and our detention centers like what we have down in Tacoma. I think we need to make sure that people who are here under the DACA program have a path to citizenship. And people who are here under temporary work visas, who are such as, especially in this state, completely working in the fields, in this state, are working because they don't have worker protections. They're in deplorable conditions, horrible housing, can't get the medical concerns. I mean, we had farm workers in Yakima having to go on strike just to get the protections that they needed in the fields. So
Thank you, Mr.
I have a lot
Call.
to say on immigration issues. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. And now it is time for our 2-minute wrap-ups for each candidate. We will go in alphabetical order, beginning with Mr. Call.
All right, thank you very much. My name's Jason Call. I'd be proud to serve the 2nd District in Congress. I'm running a no corporate money campaign. All of my funding is completely grassroots. I am running on a platform that supports Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, federal jobs guarantee, housing for all. I believe that we need to change our energy systems and change our energy infrastructure and build green housing. And I believe all of this can be done with federal investments, and that would provide jobs guarantee with a living wage. I think we need to drastically scale back our military adventurism. We need to have our soldiers paid more in the military, but have weapons contractors make less. I have been an anti-war protester for the last 30 years. And I want everybody to understand also that Washington is a top 2 primary state, which means you can have 2 Democrats on the ballot. I look forward to being on the ballot next to the incumbent and giving the voters of this district a choice that they have never had before, and that is to vote for a progressive Democrat. I think it's time to expand the squad. I am there to support Pramila Jayapal, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and make sure that the working class in this country finally gets a fair shake. We have tons of corporate representation in this country, and we have very little representation for the working class. I humbly ask for your vote. I very much encourage you to look at my website, callforcongress.com, check out my Facebook page, check out my Twitter, all at Call for Congress. You'll see exactly where I'm coming from. I was a high school teacher for 18 years. I understand the education system and know how to best support education. I would seek to be on the Education and Labor Committee if I was elected. We're running a great race. We have a very strong volunteer force. We have a couple hundred volunteers. We're pushing into phone banking right now. So if you get a phone call, please engage with us. We'd love to talk to you about our ideas. But I think it's time for real progressive change in this country. Humbly ask for your vote. Thank you very much. Oh, let me throw in some endorsements. I am endorsed by the Democrats of Whidbey Island, Democrats of San Juan County, of Skagit County, and of Snohomish County, along with Washington Youth for Climate Justice, Sunrise Bellingham, Our Revolution.
And your time is up.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Call. Mr. Hart.
Everyone I talk to agrees the voters of Washington's 2nd Congressional District have a real choice to make in the upcoming election. And I think what I'm offering stands out as the best choice for these times. Unfortunately, our district has seen firsthand the consequences of not having the most qualified people look after our interests. We've seen leaders with a lack of expertise and understanding of our infrastructure system fail in their oversight of it and expect taxpayers to simply pay to have it rebuilt over and over again. We have seen the largest failure of government oversight in aviation history, resulting in the unnecessary deaths of hundreds of people around the world and a loss of faith that will take decades to restore. We've seen tens of thousands of jobs shipped overseas without concern for the middle class who are now finding themselves on the brink of financial collapse. I'm not more of the same old thing that has gotten us into the problems we're in. I'm also not someone new who has good intentions, but doesn't actually have any skills needed to get this job done. What I offer you as a candidate is someone who is ready on day one. I am a licensed civil engineer who is an infrastructure expert. I am a successful small business owner who knows how to oversee government and stay under budget. I'm a veteran who has served my country honorably overseas and who will never surrender any part of my country to a foreign nation. And possibly most important, I am someone who has already shown I will put it all on the line for my fellow citizens as a government watchdog. This is a time for someone like me who can actually get this job done. My name is Cody Hart, and I'm asking to be your representative from the 2nd Congressional District. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Hazelow.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you guys for letting me talk tonight. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the last few years. Recently with the ACA Act, we were told that we could keep our doctors. We were told our healthcare costs would go down. We were told that our services would get better. Did any of that happen for any of you? No. Our costs have went up. We had to change doctors. The amount of plans we have went down. We're in bad shape when it comes to healthcare. We need to work on that. Our education system stopped teaching the truth about our country and our experiences, both good and bad, creating an entire generation of people who are dependent and blame everybody else for their problems. Victimhood, that's what we call it. Average people like you and I are being criminalized for non-crimes. And yet we have people rioting in the streets. We have people committing crimes. We've got looting, arson, destruction, even murder. Endless wars, astronomical debt, terrible immigration system, mass addiction and homelessness, even hungry kids. I could go on for a long time with that stuff. So it's things we need to work on. But the real issue is career politicians not wanting to do anything that hurt their next chance at election. I think all of us that are here tonight talking can say we need something other than career politicians. They're like-minded people and they think the same, and we expect them to think and do something different when we elect them next time? That's just insanity. Americans deserve and demand accountability, a leaner government whose sole goal is priority to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law, to represent and serve its citizens first, not everybody else in the world, and to ensure that what we have built, fought, and died for is preserved, taught, and passed down to our children. So with that being said, 21 years in the Navy, 8 years military contracting, multiple years in corporate America, and dozens of countries visited give me a big advantage over a career politician, both in local, domestic, and international affairs. I mean, take for instance, in the 70s, only 70% of the country, I think the internet's having a problem. So I'll get right to the end. Here's the deal. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to represent these people. I'm going to live with these people that I represent. I'm endorsed by Skagit County. I'm endorsed by Whatcom County. Excuse me, I'm their preferred candidate. I don't know what the difference is. I'm endorsed by Snohomish County, Island County.
Thank you.
I'm meeting with San Juan County tomorrow. So I ask for your vote. I ask for you to send me to Congress to fix things. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Hi, I'm a Navy wife, retired CB husband, daughter of a naval officer. And my life experiences have brought me to why I decided to run for office. my daughter paged for Barbara Bailey years ago when she was in high school, and I became very interested in Rick Larson's seat. I'm running for this office because I believe that Mr. Larson has been a party line voter.
Please keep to the issues, Ms. Kennedy.
I'm sorry?
Please keep to the issues.
Okay. So I'm running for office so that I can sustain and keep up the values that I hold dear to me and for my future generations of grandkids, hopefully. I'm running because I feel like the country is at a loss in a lot of ways where the division and the divide in the country right now, even with the president that people like or dislike, isn't all President Trump's fault. And I'm hoping that when I get to Congress that I'm going to bring something that's different and unique and try to make a difference, because the discourse that's happening right now and has been happening for a long time in Congress, we need to have people that are not career politicians, that aren't there for personal gain. I'm going because I want to represent District 2 in Washington State, where I live and where I'm going to end my days, where I've raised my family, where my family and friends are. And I feel like that I have a lot to offer. I'm easy to talk with. I just feel that having somebody that is not a career politician is something that we all as citizens are desperately looking for. And I think I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Representative Rick Larson. Mr. Larson could not be with us tonight because he is in Washington, D.C., but he has sent a statement that will be read by League member Alan Whitman. Alan?
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for the opportunity to submit this closing statement. I wish I could speak to you all today, but I'm currently in Washington, D.C. In our region, workers, families, and small business owners are hurting. That is why I am focused on addressing the public health and economic crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is my priority to extend the additional help for unemployment, extend and expand support to help working families put food on the table, and provide continued support for small businesses. We must also provide help for state, local, and tribal government workers so they can continue to offer services to our communities and assistance to school districts to help with their decisions about reopening classrooms in the fall. As our communities face the public health and economic emergency of COVID-19, President Trump has continued to spread misinformation. Voters have a choice to make this fall. Do we want a country that responds to the needs of its people? I hope you'll join me in the fight to elect Democrats up and down the ballot and beat Trump. Visit ricklarson.org to join our team and see my broad support from environmental groups, women's rights organizations, organized labor, and others. I am focusing on supporting workers and families, expanding access to health care, and fighting climate change. I'm also working to protect the right to vote, support all mail voting, and protect the U.S. Postal Service. I hope to see you soon on the virtual campaign trail. I will keep working to earn your support.
Thank you, Alan, for reading the statement. And next is a statement by Mr. Wee.
I want to thank everyone for being here. I appreciate each one of you. I think it's a great thing that we can openly talk about our ideas. That's what makes America great. And thank you, League of Women Voters. I want to say that America is the greatest nation on earth, and I'm really happy and really fortunate to be a part of it. I wanted to read something to you. You all know it. It's from the Declaration of Independence. It says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are what? They're created equal. So whether you're black or white, brown or yellow, or even blue, that's how God, well, maybe blue, God didn't make you that, but there's skin color, it comes from God. And so none of us should look and say that we have to face up to the crimes that other people of the same color committed. It doesn't even make any sense at all. And I see BLM and other such groups yelling and screaming about that and asking for white people to pay reparations. I think that's totally ludicrous. Should white people pay for reparations for the opium wars? Like, when do I get my check? That doesn't make sense. We all know that if we look at it. So what? That they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life, our government should defend the right of every child, born or unborn, to fulfill their God-given potential. Liberty, unshackle the American people, regardless of their skin color. Remove heavy taxation, bloated bureaucracy,
15.
unreasonable regulation, and give us a people that can create, build, and thrive. A people dependent on the government for food, for shelter, for medical care will be slaves. We will be slaves. And finally, the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wee.
Yep, you know it all.
And thank you